Jackson Radio Show.
Hey, fellow patriots. You're listening to The Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. I'm your guest host, Liz Matory. Thank you again for checking us out. And again, thank you for your open hearts, open minds, and all you do for our awesome republic. Yeah, so we were talking before about the concept of labels and how the left uses them and how the right sort of uses, I guess, different ones, and the importance of what definitions are, and let's talk about the power of all these words. You know, as I said, I'm a new convert to the cause. I'm a born-again Republican. I'm a recovering liberal, you know, and I'm on a mission, like many of you are, and I know that Kevin is, to encourage more and more people to empower themselves with truth, because there's so many lies out there, man. Like, you know, you talk about fake news. Like, you can't even start about fake news when you have fake philosophy. Let's think about it. You know, you have what is liberal, you know, what is conservative, you know, what do liberals do? What do conservatives do? I think, if anything, yes, there are people out there that purposefully confuse us. But if we, again, like, have enough knowledge to at least begin to start thinking again for ourselves. I remember when I first left, I was actually an independent for 6 months. A little backstory, I guess. I'm a little political. I have become more political over the years. I ran for a state position in 2014 as a Democrat. Congratulations to me. I placed last, so that means I was the most conservative Democrat out there in my district. And then in 2016, I was considering running for Congress because our senator, Senator Barbara Mikulski, retired, and my congressman at the time, Chris Van Hollen, who is now the senator now, decided to run for her seat. So, as you know, definitely in Maryland and probably in your own state, incumbents like never leave. And we could talk about term limits some other time. But, you know, when that happened back in 2015, I actually was working with my best friend. And actually, I might as well go into it now. I said I was a DC native. I grew up with Marion Barry's son. So Marion Barry, a lot of you know who Marion is. Actually, his birthday was this week. He passed away in 2014, but he was a notable and or notorious mayor for life of the District of Columbia. Christopher and I were in the same class growing up. We've known each other since we were 2 years old, and he was my first love. When Marion passed away in 2014, Christopher and I reunited. Actually, we had another friend who passed away right before Marion died, and Christopher wanted to run for his father's seat on Ward 8 City Council. We all know there is a big, you know, obstacle because of, you know, his history, and we can talk about that in a moment. But, you know, I was in DC for months working with Christopher to work with him to run a campaign to acquire his father's seat on the Ward 8 City Council. That's sort of like when you start seeing how bad things are. So I was driving, you know, from Silver Spring, you know, up in Montgomery, literally only 6 miles away, down to the other side of the District of Columbia to Ward 8. Ward 8, unfortunately, still is the poorest region of the district. Yes, there is some diversity of economy there. I would say it's 97% American of African descent. Let's face it, a lot of our communities are still very segregated. That's something that we need to just acknowledge right now. But it also, things like, you know, it's a food desert to this day, you know. There was one supermarket that just opened up in the recent years. Where I live, there's 7 Whole Foods within a 4-mile radius. And, you know, when you deal with sort of like politics and policy, you have to go to resources as well. I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, and please thank you for, you know, being patient with me, but, you know, I can't start talking about how I went through my journey without starting there. You know, I in that experience with Christopher, I was able to it was very jarring for me. It was very exhausting. It was very sort of taxing to my spirit, because I was absolutely frustrated and angry. Both of us were, because through that campaign, it's the first time I heard gunshots. I grew up in a way that never had to hear what gunshots sounded like. I mean, yeah, you're on the shooting range, it's one thing, but I'm talking about the gunshots that sound like firecrackers, and then somebody actually lights up firecrackers to, confuse police. And then you've got like the ghetto bird, or like, the helicopter to fly over to see where the shooting happens. Like, all that stuff, unfortunately, is like normal for some folks. Super not normal for me, and it's not normal for most folks. But again, like, that shouldn't be normal in our society. That shouldn't be a norm for any American citizen, let alone, our youngest. I think when you work in nonprofits, you're like, okay, you're going to save the world, and you're going to, work at schools, and it's going to be great. And at the end of the day, all the children go back home. Like, what happens when the kids go back to communities that are food deserts, and, if they have enough to eat, you're trying to figure out, how can we make this right? What are we going to do this generation? Now that, Marion's passes away and my father passed away, and there's a lot of responsibility that our next generation has on us, because, despite Marion's sort of personal issues that everybody loves to talk about, he literally was one of the most powerful mayors ever created, let alone black mayors in the United States. During one of his eulogies, they had pointed out that the District of Columbia, when we got home rule, a lot of folks don't know this, but forever we were governed solely by the federal government, and not until the 70s did we get some sort of semblance of government with the mayor and the city council. And so Marion was one of the, if not the first, black mayors in the South that had actual control of his city. A lot of the development that you see in the District of Columbia, a lot of people want to give other people credit, but it was Marion that put a lot of that into play. And so, again, going back to it, how I grew up in the District of Columbia, we were surrounded by all sorts of black folks. You had your janitors, you had your teachers, you had your, small business owners, you had contractors, you had construction workers, you had all the government was black. You had the doctors and the nurses. And so at the end of the day, when we grew up, there was no question as to what you could do and what you'd be capable of, because you had examples of said, possibility. Marion, when he came on the scene, he went to Morehouse. He was, his elder was Martin Luther King. So he came in the city, sort of his claim to fame beginning was the Pride Inc. Pride Inc. was a program that he formed with a bunch of folks that I was able to meet throughout the last couple of years. And their mission was to get folks employed, get them jobs, get them out and up and through a course of prosperity and opportunity. And even when we were with Christopher during his campaign, you connect with all these wonderful people in the city. Kid you not, every single person that said, we remember Marion, number one thing that they remember, their first memory was that he got them their first job. And when you hear and you see the faces, especially of older men, that changed their lives. Or at the very least, it allowed them in their youth to know that they had possibility to better themselves. And again, we've talked about it before, and this is newsflash to me, someone like me, that's a conservative principle. That's the founding principle that we have here in our country, that regardless of how you were raised, who you were born to, and what your lot in life tended to be, here in this country, specifically now, as American citizens, if you keep your nose clean, You do what you need to do, learn what you need to learn, and believe in yourself and, yes, in God, you are able to change your life for the better. And that's the formula. That's sort of sadly, the missing piece for a lot of the communities that are struggling, when we were working through the campaign, and I'll have to take a break in a moment, but this was the piece that Christopher and I were working on. We didn't know that we had to commit fully to conservatism, but we knew that nothing else that liberals or nothing else that government could do would help. If anything, it was many respects the government that really messed up our community.
Kevin Jackson
on the Black Sphere Radio Network.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177, or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.